Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today we are ranking all 800 cost CCF tier 3s. I cannot believe it's actually been 5 months since I made this video. So many. We've gotten 6 new tier 3s that are 800 CCF, which is crazy because you don't always get an update with an 800 CCF tier 3 in it. And so many other existing tier 3s like Winter Soldier, etc. got brand new uniforms. So this is going to be a huge meta shift for just ranking the 800 CCF tier 3s. Now I know Shang-Chi is just around the corner, so he's not going to make it onto this list, obviously, but still, I think there's more than enough content here to justify explanations, and I don't want a video to run super long because I have to talk about 100 new 800 CCF tier 3s. So we're going to do it now, and maybe we'll do it in a month or two, depending on how many new 800 CCF tier 3s come out, how many existing ones get brand new uniforms, because these days with a brand new uniform you become a brand new character. So let's start it off by getting some of the easy ones out of the way. We know Sharon Rogers is the S tier god queen. She has been for a long time. She probably will be until I turn to an old man, dust and bones. On the flip side, Spider-Man is kind of sad boy hours with the D tier. Now before we go any further, now that I've triggered people watching, standard PSA, this is just my opinion. You're more than welcome to, and it's capable. You're capable of clearing the vast majority of the game content with almost any tier 3 that you want, right? There's really only end game content that you cannot clear with this character or that character, but if you want to make the most of your account, then you will have to start to take into consideration meta and, characters being better than others, so on and so forth. But I know it's Marvel. I know everybody likes, has their favorite, so I'm not trying to diss your favorite character. One of my favorite characters, Ant-Man, he's also D tier for now. So, it is what it is. We just sort of accept it and we move on. But here's the thing with having Sharon at the S tier. There's actually another character recently who got, in my opinion, got bumped up to the S tier, and that's Loki. Now you'll see here that I actually have both President Loki and TVA Loki. I'm not going to be ranking them both because that's silly, but I actually do think President Loki is going to be better overall, and I'm actually going to choose him for the tier list. I'm actually not going to use TVA Loki at all because of the heal and because of how much better that makes him for newer players, for players that get hit a lot, and then for endgame, very, very hard endgame content. When you get up to Null and Mephisto stage 30, 40, 50 and plus, they hit so hard that you need lots of healing or you're toast. So there's no coincidence that people are doing really, really high stages with President Loki. It also helps that he has more hits on his 3-5-4 combo, but yeah, he definitely deserves that S tier classification. And I'm very stingy with the S tier classification, so there's actually only one more character that makes this list for S tier, and that is Captain America Falcon. Now Captain America Falcon may be better for World Boss Legend than Sharon in some cases, but I put him down here because just when we're just ranking 800 CCF tier 3s, I have to be a little bit more particular. So I'm going to take a look at things like, if they can work with an obelisk, or if they need a CTP of rage or something like that, or a CTP of judgment, like a very specific CTP. I also have to look at how difficult their rotation is, how easily they die, survivability, and that sort of thing. And Sharon has one of the easiest, if not the easiest, rotations in the game. Now, it takes some timing to learn how to play her, but in terms of the button pressing, it's very easy. On the flip side, Captain America Falcon, I still make mistakes with his rotation. Not that I make a mistake, it's just my fingers aren't fast enough to press all of the buttons in sequence, especially for the 4 cancel 3 portion of the setup. So yeah, he does lose a few points for being a little bit less consistent because of the fact that you can miss procs here and there. Moving along to some of the other characters on this list, I think War Machine is actually really, really, really good. But again, I do think he's going to fall short of Sharon Rogers. We have to see how he plays out in PvP and how well he does there. But for now, I think he's just a solid A tier, which is still very, very good. The top of the tier could almost be the bottom of the next tier. So you got to keep that in mind. A high A tier is similar to the low S tier, which is a huge compliment for War Machine. So there's no knock on him. It just is what it is. We also have Ghost Rider there. Ghost Rider just suffers from the survivability issues. Otherwise, his damage is bonkers, but he also suffers from the fact that he can't really use anything other than a rage or a judgment. So you have to keep that in mind. These 4 cats here can all work with an obelisk. War Machine a little bit less so, but yeah, these 3 cats can all work with an obelisk and work very well, excel. Once you get down here, they start to struggle a little bit with an obelisk, or they have other issues. For example, Rogue really doesn't shine until you give her a judgment. However, when you give her a judgment, she's an absolute queen. She's best in slot for squad battle Vibranium. She's amazing, and she's likely the best mutant we have in the game right now. Yeah, probably the best mutant we have in the game right now, which is big. She's bringing up the whole mutant class. A mutant that I'm not too keen on these days is Namor. Namor's not actually going to be at the top of the C class, the C tier. He's going to sort of move his way down, but yeah, I'm not too hot on Namor these days. He definitely needs a uniform. His value really only rests in dispatch, and he's not even that good for dispatch. So I would not get Namor if you don't have him, but if you have him, you could try him out for dispatch if you haven't been having luck there. But yeah, I'm not too happy about his production. Similarly, Black Widow has fallen off quite hard. She was a PvP meta staple a year ago, and now she just can't compete anymore. She just gets one-shotted because everybody's got iframe ignore now. It's hot now. And in PvE, there's just, there's no candle between Captain America Falcon and Black Widow. He's just miles ahead of her. Even Yelena's ahead of her, so to speak. So yeah, she's fallen hard on the times, and maybe the movie being delayed was sort of a clue that she was going to have her power sort of delayed. Similarly, I think Black Bolt was kind of overrated at the time of him coming out. I'm not really too keen on Black Bolt these days. He does have a heal, he does have debuff immunity, but his rotation is quite wonky, which makes it a little bit difficult to work with a regular proc or a CTP of energy. So yeah, Rage, I mean, you can work with an energy, but Rage takes away a lot of the hassle and the headache, but he still has some quirks that I'm not too big of a fan of, like, his iframe, his tier 3 is not an iframe, so he gets interrupted on that a lot. He gets guard broken on it as well. It's kind of tough for Black Bolt, and there's just better, stronger universal types. Loki just blows Black Bolt out of the water. A character that doesn't get blown out of the water is Iron Man. I think Iron Man's a solid, Superior Iron Man is a solid B tier character. He can ascend to low A tier if you are playing in the last 30% of the enemy's health bar. So keep that in mind. He's sort of an A tier in disguise as a B tier, because for the first 70% of the fight, he's B tier. But in the last 70%, he's like high A tier. His damage just goes supernova. So yeah, definitely keep that in mind. But he's not too, he's not as good. He's not too A tier in the first 2/3 of the fight, and his healing could be a little bit better. But in that last third of the fight, he's one of the best. Not one of the best is Crescent. Really only used for her leadership. I guess that would still make her better than at least Ant-Man, possibly Spider-Man. But yeah, besides her leadership, she's basically useless. So I would strongly advise against tier 3ing her. Similarly, Cyclops, you're basically just tier 3ing him for the leadership. He's not worth much else beyond that. I mean, he's worth a world boss invasion one-shot, I guess, a co-op one-shot. That's basically it. Unfortunately, I have to classify Black Panther here. I am going to put him C tier. I think he's kind of high C tier, but still the rework just did not do enough for him and didn't really push him in any direction compared to other combat types. He really just doesn't have enough to, really do, like, he doesn't have enough damage, and he also doesn't have enough healing. It's really the combination of those two things that sort of make him just a little bit lackluster at this point in the game. With 30 plus tier 3s, you got to do a lot to break out of the meta, to break out of this sort of the B to C tier. This is like the average tier in my opinion. A to S tier is like really good. B tier and C tier is just like average, right? So you really got to do more. You got to go above and beyond to break out of the average tier. One character that definitely does break out of the average tier is, I'm looking over there because I wrote down the list. I just made the list. Is Luna Snow. I think Luna Snow, her value is weird because she's never lost value in ABX, but she has lost value in World Boss Legend, but she still has value in World Boss Ultimate. She's a very weird character, so I'm going to put her here. I think this is a respectable place to put her. She's good. She's very good. She's always recommended as the premium character that every player picks up first because she's just never been bad. Some players suspect that the devs have been secretly buffing her, because she's just never been bad. It's weird. There's really not much else to say about the character. She has a lot of healing, but she also has very low defense and few defensive abilities. So you just got to out heal the damage that you're being dealt and dodge the guard breakables, because she will get guard broken a lot otherwise. Pretty kind of a polarizing character in my opinion, but still undeniably strong. Bringing up the rear for the A tier is Vision. Now, some people don't like Vision as much, but I think Vision is a little underrated. Not only does he have a flexible leadership, but he's got healing and he's got a ton of damage, and he can work with an Obelisk. He can work with a CTP of energy. He can work with a Rage. It's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for the Obelisk or the energy, but he can definitely make it work. And he makes it work a lot better than some other characters. But again, I would say his power level is probably right around Iron Man's. It's just that he's going to be consistent, whereas Iron Man is just going to, you know, he's going to Respiro burst in that last 30%. There's not, in general as well, I want to say there's not much of a consideration for PvP here. You will see that most PvP characters, dominant PvP characters, end up in the B tier, because unfortunately for 800 CCF tier 3s right now, being good in PvP is only good enough to put you halfway there. Like you're still not going to be able to compete with on a very, very high level. You're not gonna be able to compete with, you know, Sentry and Doctor Doom now, and these harder hitting tier 3s that have just way higher base stats in general. So a character like Captain Marvel would be a really good example. On the one hand, she's very, very good for countering Doctor Doom in PvP with her new villain uniform specifically, but otherwise she's just not going to be, you know, she's not going to be good enough to counter Sentry most of the time, to counter some of these other big boys, and she, you know, isn't going to do much for you in PvE that you can't get from other characters. Similarly, a character like Hulk has definitely some value in PvP still, but his PvE value is so much lower than these other characters that he really can't be considered beyond B tier. A couple of other PvP characters we have to slot. We have Daredevil, who is surprisingly good for PvP, but does require that defenders line up to really flesh him out. Especially Luke Cage leadership is almost like necessary for Daredevil to do really well. But with the introduction of the Mighty Authority and the Brilliant Authority, I think that Daredevil does actually have even more potential for PvP. But again, his PvP potential is at the cost of having very little PvE potential, to the point where he just can't be really considered beyond B tier, because PvP characters just don't occupy that space high enough to make it matter. Similarly, Blue Marvel, a little bit better for PvE than some of these characters, a little bit worse for PvP. So you really, it really depends what you value more and where the character would end up being. I think he's probably worth being around right here in between Captain Marvel. He could be a little bit better than Captain Marvel, but I think that's really where he stops. He has more value in something like Alliance Conquest and Alliance Tournament because of the AoE of his skills and the fact that he's going to affect all allies with his buffs, and he's going to counter the debuff, you know, leadership. He's gonna punish them with more damage. He's also gonna taunt, right? Taunting in a 3v3 situation is huge. But again, it's just PvP. It's just those two game modes. For PvE, he really isn't anything beyond average. He can work with an Obelisk, which is nice. He's got a nice, easy 5-4 rotation, but he really just did not impress me in any of my testing. And there's other universals like Loki just blows him out of the water. Even Vision is going to outpace him and has a better offensive leadership. So yeah. Moving along to some PvE, some more PvE characters. We have Thor here. Thor, you know, has a bit of a wonky rotation, has a bit of a learning curve with the 4th skill. You have to hold it. That makes him a little bit tougher to use. He's also going to need a Rage or a Judgment, which is also going to dock him some points. And he's just not going to be as strong as some of his other characters. His brother just, you know, he got that Disney Plus show, so he just leaped, you know, head and shoulders ahead of him, leaps and bounds ahead. There's just not enough for him to keep up here. Star-Lord is actually the cheapest tier 3 here in some ways, because he's only 640 CCF. But yeah, he's mostly a leadership. His damage is actually underrated. I will say that Star-Lord's damage is underrated, but he's not going to carry you too far against endgame content. He's mostly just used for that blast leadership. Similarly, Professor X, despite getting a uniform pretty recently, he's just not that good. You know, the singular heal, and he just didn't get enough on his uniform to really push him and keep him atop the meta for a long enough time. Another unfortunate one for Winter Soldier, just not good enough. I honestly just think he's like high C tier. He's got a good leadership, he's got decent damage, but there's just other speed types, Rogue, Luna, well, not in World Boss Legend, but like Rogue, Captain America, Falcon, that just do it way better than he does. Just way better than he does. And that's pretty unfortunate, but that's kind of the way it is. Similarly, Storm. Now for Storm, I'm going to put her here because of her passive. Her passive gives you 35% elemental damage, which is actually very useful for climbing certain World Boss Legend stages. But outside of that, and outside of some limited World Boss Ultimate content, she is not really going to do much for you. So her value here could shuffle depending on whether you care about that buff or not, whether you need that 35% elemental damage. But that's basically a leadership, right? 35% elemental damage is better than 35% all attack for someone like Rogue because she's all elemental, or someone like Ghost Rider. So you can't ignore the fact that 3 of the top 5 characters in A tier are all elemental. And then you also have Thor, who's elemental, and so on and so forth. So there are actually quite a few characters that she hits buffs on. But yeah, outside of the buff, she's really not that good. Speaking of buffs, Taskmaster. I would say Taskmaster is a solid B tier based solely off of his buffs. And again, if you need those buffs, he could actually climb quite a bit higher on this part of the tier list. So it really just depends whether you need the buffs or not. I'm going to assume most players need the buffs, so I'm actually going to put him right here. No disrespect to Hulk, but these buffs are so clutch, it's bonkers. Not only the regular buffs that he gives with the uniform, but also the extra buffs that he gives to Weapons Master characters. Last but not least, for the D tier, I did miss one character here. We have Captain America. I am going to put him here, maybe there. Yeah, he's just not that good. There's really not too much to say about Captain America, but the biggest thing for Captain America is that the biggest criticism is his tier 3. It's very hard to use. It's very hard to get maximum payoff on it. And I do think the next Captain America uniform does need to address his tier 3. Otherwise, he's always going to be in this sort of average to below average limbo, unless they like super tune his stats. The rest of the characters actually all land in the B tier, so I'm just going to slot them in here. Magneto is mostly a leadership, although he is very good for dispatch. I will definitely say that he's very good for dispatch. Venom and Carnage are pretty much side by side. I think Venom does edge out Carnage a little bit for 2 reasons. One, he's still meta for Combat Hero Day. I believe he's still meta for Combat Hero, or maybe not. But anyways, I think he is. And if he's not, he's very close. And then he also has an easier rotation to use with an Obelisk or a CTP of Energy, whereas Carnage kind of does need a CTP of Rage to be useful. So that's where he's going to lose a little bit of the value that he has. But yeah, otherwise, this is how the tier list shakes out. So that does it for the 800 CCF tier 3 tier list. Let me know down below in the comments what you think of the tier list. Smash the like button if you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.